Please welcome Ron Melhuish with his presentation on the Greenstone Regional Skills Center. This presentation will explain the importance of the Skills Center and its current situation and future plans. S'il vous plaît, veuillez accueillir Ron Melhuish, qui présente le Centre régional de développement des compétences de Greenstone. Il nous expliquera l'importance du Centre de développement des compétences, sa situation présente et future.
Well, it was really good to hear the two speakers this morning and for Ovid Mercady's comments about how the whole community can work together and move forward, and not just each individual community on its own, but how the whole community can work forward. So what I want to bring to you this morning is our conversation and how we got started on building the Greenstone Regional Skills Center, which is under construction right now, due to open in September. And it all started years ago when, in 2008, 2009, 2010, in that area there was, in Greenstone, there was pretty much depression. There was a crumbling forest industry. There was people moving out of town. Housing values were going down, and there was a general funk in our community. Population dropped from about 5,000 down to about 4,000, and even less. People that had been in the forest industry for years sold their equipment and had moved away or had been in a situation where they were traveling to go to work out west or up to the diamond mine and so forth. And that had a lot of social problems and it had a lot of impact. But one of the things that happened during that time period was that the mining industry began to become a little bit more active in Greenstone. Premier and other mining companies were beginning to drill. Some of the people that worked in the forest industry were able to get jobs in mining, but others just had to move away. So with that, near the end of that time period, when things were still looking pretty dismal because mining had been going on in that area for quite some time, the Ring of Fire announcement happened, and that brought up a lot of excitement, and everybody was looking forward to some good times coming forward. And the municipality went out and hired our EDO. Our old EDO retired, and hired our new EDO, Vicki Blanchard. And then what happened next is she began conversations with some funding agencies, and with MTCU, with MND&M and others, to discuss with the provincial growth plan just what we could do to take advantage of some of the things that were going to happen with the Ring of Fire announcement. And that was really the impetus, the fire, the spark that began a lot of excitement that moved things forward. And so with that announcement and through that discussion, she came forward to council and said we needed to go for this community adjustment funding that was made available and begin a plan to bring us forward from where we were, which was not a very good place, to where we needed to be in a very short period of time. And it required a lot of change in thinking, because going from a period of being just hanging on to a period of expansion required a big shift in thinking, a big shift in philosophy. So she convinced us to go forward and apply for this funding, and we did, and we got the funding for this for community adjustment. And they formed an organization called the Greenstone Labor Market Working Group. And it involved a group of people that was involved from industry, from First Nations, from education, And they were going to take a look at the situation, take a look at our community, and see what we needed to bring us forward. And one of the recommendations that they came up with was for a skill center that would not only train the local people in Greenstone, but also train Aboriginals, the far north as well that could come down. And so they came up with this recommendation for a skill center. And so what happened from there is they came to council, they convinced us to go forward with this application. So this application went forward, and it involved a lot of revisions. It bounced around for quite some time, and frankly, I was one councillor who was rather very skeptical over whether or not we'd ever get funded for this skill center. And so during that period of time, things were still bubbling with the Cliffs, and then all of a sudden, the Cliffs announcement came out where they said that they were going to suspend, for the time being, their forward progress on the Ring of Fire announcement. Well, I sat there and I said, well, that's really going to put a crimp in our application for a skill center, because the impetus for this skill center was the Ring of Fire. And if things are going to be on a little bit of a slower pace than what we anticipated, I kind of wondered whether the federal and the provincial governments would pony up with the money. And so things really started to go down again. It's been a bit of an emotional roller coaster in that respect. So things kind of were quiet for quite some time, and our EDO and Vicky and the Labor Market Working Group, they stayed enthused. They kept meeting. They were dogged in their determination that what we needed was this skill center. There is a shortage of space, but I'll get to that in a few minutes. And then in October of 2013, we were told that we got the funding. And there was a little bit of the dog caught the car syndrome. What do we do with it now that we got the funding? And we were kind of wondering about that. So we had to wait. We couldn't do anything. We couldn't make any announcements, because that is the purview of the federal and the provincial governments, is to make those kind of announcements. Well, that came out in October, and so we had to wait until the announcement actually came through. So then what we had is the idea of what we needed to have in that building. Now, the proposal that was drawn up, that went in on the funding application, was done by the educational partners that were at the table, the Greenstone Labor Market Working Group, and they had a list of programs and a list of courses that would take the population that was currently there and how to get them trained and ready for the mining industry. And so we built this building quite a bit under the same situation that the one in Dryden is. And so some of the courses that they highlighted that we needed to continue, that we should be operating, is what I would call a science lab, or the wastewater treatment facility that would train people on how to operate their wastewater plants, both in the far north and along the North Shore regionally and so forth. And one of the advantages, and as councillors at budget time, disadvantages of Greenstone is we have 5 of those things. We have everything from well water source drinking water, to a slow sand, to whatever, to a lake coming in. So anybody that needed training on how to run a wastewater plant, we had it. There isn't a plant out there that we don't at least have to pay for one of them. And for 4,000 people, paying for 4 or 5 of these things is a very expensive thing to do. So that was a lot of forethought went on in this committee to be able to sit there and say, well, we can do a lot of field trips to the plants that are even in our community where people could get hands-on training on the actual operational of the plant, as well as the educational facility, which would be in the building for the academic portion of it. So I believe it's going to be extremely popular, and it's going to be an extremely active part of our building there. And because people will be able to not just think theoretically about it, they'll get hands-on, be able to get hands-on training for it. Some of the other aspects of it is the shop area that we're going to have, and whether it's going to be welding or pipe fitting or something mechanical. One of the things that happened in Greenstone over that period where population was shrinking and people were really downsizing and just trying to hang on is the school population went down. And when the school population went down, the Board of Education decided that we did not need an elementary school and a secondary school in the ward of Geraldton anymore. So they knocked down the elementary school and moved all those students into the high school. And so now the building that housed the high school before now houses the elementary and the secondary school. Well, what's going to happen is that as the mining industry begins to expand in our area because of the premier announcement that the premier find or the premier activity, even if the population only goes up 10 or 15%, they're going to run out of space in that school. There was barely enough space to handle the students once they shrunk it down. If there's any population increase, they're going to be short of space. So having the building built to be able to teach the trades for the skilled trades that are needed for the industry, I think was a lot of foresight in that area as well. So in there as well, we have planned for a commercial kitchen for people to be trained on operating a commercial kitchen, whether it's for the forest industry or the mining industry. There's going to be a commercial kitchen facility there as well. And there's some office spaces and some other things. And we're just developing the courses for that. It's under construction now, and we anticipate the occupation will be in September. I was in the building this week. The walls are up on the inside, the ductwork's in there, and they're stringing the wire for the internet, for the wired internet. So I think if we really had to, we would be in there in the summertime. But the summertime is also a very busy period for Geraldton Community Forest. And Geraldton Community Forest is the other partner in this building. The announcement came out in January that we did receive the funding. And the federal government and the provincial government both put in $1.75 million apiece for this building. And Geraldton Community Forest put in $500,000 cash into this building. And Geraldton Community Forest is a nonprofit organization. It is a business. But its articles of incorporation as a nonprofit is for the benefit of the people in the community. So any of the profit that is made by Geraldton Community Forest, by its mandate and articles of incorporation, have to be put back into the community. Now, Geraldton Community Forest makes its money, and has made its money over the past, fighting forest fires. They're one of the 2 forest fighting companies licensed in Ontario to go out as a second-tier firefighting company. And they train 40 8-person crews every year, and they hire they hire the people every year to fight fires, and on some of the busy years, they've even had to go up as high as 44, 46, but they're second tier. The M&R does the first tier, the initial attack, we're the second tier. They hire locally. We hire an awful lot of First Nations. We go into a lot of the First Nations and do the training there. We do the S100, the S200 training. We have been doing training for the last 20, 25 years in chainsaw, WMIS, transportation of dangerous goods, all of that kind of stuff centered in the forest fighting business. When Geraldton Community Forest was started, it was under the old town of Geraldton before the amalgamation, and it was designed and meant to get a window into the forest industry. Forest industry up here was essentially maintained by Kimberly-Clark at the time, and the community wanted to have an in on and see what was happening in the forest industry, because we were reactionary only. Forest industry would do something and we would have to react to it. We wanted to be part of the discussions, or at least have an idea of what's going on in the forest industry. So community forests got started. There was special legislation. There was 4 or 5 of them created in Ontario, and Geraldton Community Forest is the only one that's still in existence. They realized early on that in issues like forest planning, roads planning, and all that kind of stuff, there's no money in it. So they got out of that. And they said, we're a business, we can't be spending time doing stuff that we're not making any money at. So they focused on the forest fighting. And so that's what they have done now with this project, is they're going to be expanding their training abilities. It is not this project's intent to be another college. We work with other colleges, Northern College, Confederation College, universities, Contact North, all of those will be doing a lot of the presentations and doing a lot of the actual teaching. We also will be working with a lot of other private training organizations that are MTCU certified, that can hand out certificates and that kind of stuff, in order to get the people trained locally. And so what we're doing now is just finishing up the construction stage of it, and essentially just planning for the courses that we need. We have struck an educational committee with industry involved, as well as the educational partners and some of the funding agencies, so that we can link specifically industry with the training that is being done, so that we're training for the jobs that are out there, so that the people can be hired. You've seen on the slides our focus and our mission statement, and some of the quotes, but from what the 2 speakers said this morning is really important, because the federal and the provincial governments put in $3.5 million into this. And they did this, they approved the funding at a time after Cliff said they were suspending what they were doing at this point in time. And I don't believe the federal and the provincial government would be awarding that kind of money if they didn't think the project up north was going to happen. And the problem is, because our community went through such a period of a long downtime, there is a real demographic age deficit. The North of Superior labor force group did a study, and it shows that between like 25 and 45, there's little there, because those people have had to go somewhere else to find a job. And so what we have to do now is train the people that are there to be ready for the mining jobs. Now, the really good thing that's happened since then is that Premier has come forward. Ewan Downing is on as the last speaker today, and he will bring you some information, I take it, but he's limited as to what he can say because of security rules, and he doesn't want you going out buying stocks on what he says because of Bre-X a few years back. But the issue is that it's really exciting. They're looking at 2, maybe 3 years, and where homes are going to have to be moved to make room for the pit and all of that kind of stuff. So there is a lot of construction jobs, there's a lot of heavy equipment jobs. And the other thing that's happened is the mill in Terrace Bay was bought. It was bought by a company who's going to take our trees and make rayon out of it. I own a retail store, so hopefully I'll be selling socks made out of Kenogami forest trees at some point in time, okay? But so you have that going on, and you have heavy equipment needs, you have road building needs, and you have the mining needs coming up. I think those are the major reasons why the government put in the $3.5 million into this skills training center. Because even though things may look like nothing is happening, as was mentioned before, things are happening. We are moving forward, and I'm really excited about this skills center. It'll be open this summer, late summer, early fall, and I take questions if anybody has a question on how this whole process got to be, or why I'm here and stuff like that. No questions? Great.
As a token of appreciation for you, Ms. Melhuish,